Going forward, if you are elected governor, what development projects will you pursue to bring economic development to the eastern end of the Purple Line?
We have already made great strides in the New Carrollton area with the number of agencies that have been brought in from both the federal government, with the IRS is there. We helped get the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development there, so we've tried to bring a significant amount of business presence to New Carrollton, and now it's trying to bring the residential and retail component that provides for an exciting and innovative community. Moving a little bit further to the west, the area around what many of us who've lived here a long time would refer to as the Capitol Center, that area is being redeveloped with the new Prince George's Hospital through a partnership between the state and the hospital. And I know you have the opportunity to use the hospital as an anchor institution for moving Largo further ahead as far as creating another town center. Of course, many of us in Maryland desperately wanted the new FBI headquarters to be located here. And there were two sites that the state had in Prince George's County, which would have provided a further anchor to development along that corridor, and then certainly in the whole area around the University of Maryland and in College Park going down to Hyattsville. You have that whole corridor into Riverdale where you could do so much with additional development. The University of Maryland's, and I'm so proud of my role in advancing the University of Maryland, we have the opportunity truly, I think over the next 20 years, this is the University of Maryland's moment to really hit the top. And with strong leadership in that development, I think you will have that sort of success.
Thank you. Mr. Dallas.
Got a question. How many of you saw the movie Hidden Figures? Hidden Figures. You know, Maryland in many ways is a hidden state. We have the most diverse, by many counts, the most diverse, inclusive STEM industries of any state in the country. We should not just be talking about recruiting the FBI to Prince George's. We should also be talking about recruiting Facebook and Google to Prince George's. The reality is that the big companies in the Silicon Valley are under two types of pressure right now. On one hand, there's a looming million programmer shortage. And so they're starting to build expansion campuses in other places looking to harness talent in this country, even as they make the case to import more from elsewhere. And they've got about the worst inclusion numbers you'll ever see. They've actually gone backwards. This industry is about going forward, it's gone backwards. It was 30% women, now it's about 15, and 10% black 30 years ago, now it's under 3. Well, in Maryland, our programmers, computer science, computer engineers, about 20% black. And Prince George's County has 17 times as many as Santa Clara County, the epicenter of the Silicon Valley. So we should be having conversations with the biggest tech companies in the country, not just one that put out an RFP recently, but all of them, about building expansion campuses in Maryland and Prince George's County, the western end of the red line, the eastern end of the red line is the perfect place. Of the purple line is the perfect place. Sorry, it's all forgotten, a little ticked up, the red line. Is the perfect place. And we've got to see our inclusion here not as something that we have to comply with, our diversity not as something that we have to comply with, but as our secret sauce, as our special advantage, as the reason why us and no other state.
Thank you. This next question is for Rashawn Baker and Chris Vignoraja. What policies do you think are needed to strengthen the safety net for LGBTQ families in Maryland? Mr. Baker.
Thank you. I thought I was going to get the purple line in again. No, but I think the way to strengthen the laws is what we've done at the state. I do want to commend Rich and the work that he's done, not just as a state senator, but when he worked up there in the budget office and others. We've been working on this for years, but I think, one, we have to send a clear signal at the governor's office that we will not tolerate any type of discrimination at all. And I think we also have to do that, and I commend Kevin for doing the same thing we did in Prince George's County by sending a strong signal. Those are the things that we can do on a legislative matter. The other way that we can do it is also by making changes in the way we do construction, and the way we do buildings around the state and the county. By that I mean bathrooms. A signal to say they're universal bathrooms that are not only helpful for those who are transgender, but also for families. But making signals that we're going to make every part of our great state inclusive. So not just in terms of words, but also in terms of deeds. And so as we look for those opportunities, that's what we need to do.
So I think this is a critical question today more than ever, because the truth is, in terms of expecting leadership from the White House and at the federal level, we have seen time and time again that this administration will specifically not just protect these demographics, but frankly attack them. And I think the most recent evidence is the fact that Attorney General Sessions has now indicated that he will actually not enforce discriminatory laws when it comes to transgender. And that's where I think that more than ever today, making sure that we have a Democratic governor to stand up and fight back, not just for all Marylanders, but frankly to reflect American values throughout this country, is critical. Because the reality is that when we see this type of targeting, we as a community must band together. And I think there's a few different ways we can do this. First, I think, as Rashawn just mentioned, I do think it's incredibly important for us to make sure that through procurement processes, et cetera, that there is preferential treatment that is provided to those groups that are greatest at risk. But I also think that an important part of what we should be doing is making sure that the Fairness for All Marylanders Act is expanded, because right now there are exceptions. And so LGBT discrimination is exempted when it comes to religious institutions, schools, when it comes to insurance. And under my leadership, I would make sure that those areas would be also included. But I also think that what we need to make sure we recognize is that there are many laws on the book that exist, but they're not actually enforced. We have seen this in many different areas, including LGBT, but also when it comes to environmental enforcement, or when it comes to nursing homes. Some of you may have seen the recent news about how we are now 7th worst in the nation in terms of ensuring that nursing practices end. And this is nursing practices that are discriminatory, that those end. And the reality is that this is the problem we have under Governor Hogan, because he hasn't allocated the resources to the agencies, and he hasn't ensured that the Attorney General has the resources to fight back.
Thank you. Turning to healthcare, this is a question for Ben Jealous, Kevin Cabinets, and Alec Ross. If we are able to move forward with improving the Affordable Care Act and/or some other form of health insurance as a basic right, what improvements do you think are a priority?
We're able to move forward with the ACA. You said with improving the ACA?
If we're able to move forward with improving the ACA or some other health insurance.
Got it. Really clear. We got to change the game. Americans are 5% of the world's people. We're 60% of Big Pharma's profits. Our private insurance plans, the overhead is 5 or 6 times as high as it is for public insurance plans. And our businesses are getting strangled. And our families' budgets are being squeezed because they surge. And frankly, a lot of our friends have health care in name only because the deductibles are so high. Premiums are so high. No, we've got to do something different, and I'd suggest we start by stopping being so different. Every other Western nation provides basic health care for all their folks. And we need to do it here. I spent 6 months last year seeking to move a factory from Edmonton, Canada to South Baltimore on Reedburg Street, block public housing project in Brownfield. We were going to put a vertical lettuce farm operation there that would have 36 good-paying jobs on day one. The deal fell apart, not because you had to pay for healthcare here on top of your corporate taxes. It fell apart because the entrepreneur looked into our history and saw that in the last 4 years, healthcare costs have surged 55%, and he predicted that it would happen again, and we found out 2 weeks ago. It's happening again, they're going up 33%. So, it's not about some type of healthcare coverage. We need Medicare for all. We can do it here in Maryland. Like so many other things they said was impossible and then we made happen, we'll build the movement, we'll get it done, because we will take care of our own here in Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Kamenetz.
Thank you. First of all, let me just reiterate, as I think everyone here does, I believe that every American has a basic human right, access to affordable health care. Right now, we know that Obamacare was a tremendous step forward in this country. But we have two goals that we have to achieve immediately. Number one is to protect Obamacare. The Republicans right now and our president are steadfast on a path to decimate Obamacare. And we have to, there's a huge fight taking place, and we have to stop them. We have to protect the existing laws that protect the health insurance rights of 400,000 Marylanders who now have coverage under Obamacare who did not before. We have to protect the rights of 1.5 million Marylanders who are now covered for pre-existing illnesses that were not before Obamacare. We even have to protect the rights of 41,000 students who are currently being covered under their parents' health care plan as a result of Obamacare. And then, after we protect Obamacare, we have to strengthen Obamacare. And that means to take the steps that are necessary to reduce the costs. It's hard work, it requires rolling up the sleeves, but that's what we have to get done. After that, sure, we can consider other options. And let me tell you about some options. That's why I supported the prescription drug price affordability bill that passed the General Assembly and allows our Attorney General to sue generic drug manufacturers. That's why I think that there are opportunities for incentives in the state of Maryland to create more affordable health care plans.
Thank you, Mr. Ross.
Until we get to having universal health care in this country, we are not the great country that we oftentimes think we are. It's embarrassing. And Barack Obama did a great deal, I think, to get us started. But this is something that actually creates a body count. And we have to commit to bringing universal health care into Maryland. Single payer means different things to different people, which we can see now with the United States Senate. One senator thinks it means Medicare for all, another means it means Medicaid for all, another thinks it means a public option. What we need is universal health care. And this is something that really hit me and my wife hard earlier this year. Our 10-year-old son, because we live a life of relative privilege, we're able to afford expensive health insurance. And because I married the woman that I did, she took very careful care in choosing our child's pediatrician. Long story short, his doctor found some horrible growths in his neck. He then got a $6,000 genetic test, which our health insurance was able to pay for. The result of that genetic test was scary. He then got surgery at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and he's okayed it. If he didn't have a mom and dad who could afford what we pay, which is a lot, our little boy might be dead. Until we fix the problem, where mom and dad are relatively well off, you have health care. If they aren't, you might die. We are not the country that we could and should be.
A transit question for three candidates, Chris Vignoraja, Alec Ross, and Rashawn Baker. Maryland has already built one toll road in Montgomery County that is underused. In what circumstances, do you think that toll roads and public-private partnerships for transportation can be effective?
This is where I think that it's been very interesting to watch Governor Hogan over the last 3 years, because after not doing anything on transit except for naming the ICC after the only other one-term Republican governor, he all of a sudden has come up with this brilliant plan, $9 billion, to solve the problem with Lexus lanes. And this is where I think the issue is what we see. Governor Hogan is proposing an old problem to a long-standing issue. We know that it costs our economy every year over $2 billion because of the traffic and congestion. It costs each of us individually in wages and gas use about $1,500 a year. So this is not just a convenience issue, it is an issue of family importance, and whether you get in time to see your kids before they go to bed, or whether you're stuck in traffic. But it's also an issue of economics. And this is where Governor Hogan, unlike Governor McAuliffe, when he proposed expanding roads, he didn't even include a transit option. And so for me, it's important to recognize that we need to address the problem in 2017. And what that means is a few things. First, it means actually implementing investments in transit. It's the purple line, it's the red line, it's recognizing that bike lanes should be going along with these, because we need to make sure that we don't only rely on Governor Hogan's idea, which we realize is backwards. We know, study after study has shown us, that after a period when, during construction, traffic is going to be much worse, what will ultimately happen is that it will get better for 2 to 4 years, and then we'll be back to the same old problem. And so for me, it's about looking at advanced technologies. It's about instituting transit so that we can actually make sure we can get to work and we can get home to our families.
Thank you. Mr. Russ.
When I first read the actual details, the little itty-bitty details that were there about this $9 billion road project, I thought to myself, they clearly are not doing drug testing in the office of the governor. It's like, this is a concept in search of an idea, in search of an idea. It was like a plan written by the interns that morning. Come on now. I mean, look, I think I'm a young guy. I'm 45 years old. 45, like that's young, right? And in the America that I grew up in, there weren't rich people's lanes and poor people's lanes. What is that? Like, if there's anything that's supposed to be democratic, it's the road. Right? Have we become so out of balance in this country with the relationship between corporation and government and people? Are things so out of whack now that we are now having rich people's roads, middle class people's roads, poor people's roads? It's bananas, and it's wrong. And so if you want to know what my transportation policies are going to be, take Larry Hogan's policies, flip them. You've got mine. Look, this is a case where, again, the United States is not advanced as we should be. Advanced economies around the world and in the United States are making a strong commitment to mass transit. And in places where mass transit isn't a solution, like some of the naughty little spots around 270, let's make the fixes. But the idea that we're just going to bring out the good old boys and we're just going to widen $9 billion worth of roads again, it is regressive. And I am a progressive. And that is what I think we need in our transportation policies. And that is why there is a consequence to whether we have a Democrat or a Republican for 4 more years as governor.
Thank you. Mr. Baker?
You know, I don't know how you go after those last 2 comments, but, and you were really funny.
Stand up from the governor's office to come.
And it would be funny if it wasn't for the fact that there is a seriousness to it. The governor actually proposed this because 2018 is coming up. And he hasn't done anything about transportation because it's a hard issue to deal with. He didn't go and talk to the local jurisdiction. I don't know if he talked to you, Rich. I don't know if he talked to Ike, but he certainly didn't talk to me about the impact it's going to have on the families and houses in Prince George's County. He didn't talk about the fact that both Montgomery County, Prince George's County, and Baltimore City all voted for a gas tax so you wouldn't have to have a toll road on the highways that would pay for the comprehensive transportation issues around the state where you would have a red line in Baltimore City. It would be funny if that wasn't so serious. But this is something he's using to get reelected. And it is up for us, especially if you live in the Washington region, Montgomery County, and Prince George's County, where we paid extra for the purple line. You paid $120 million in Montgomery County. We paid $110 million extra for it in Prince George's County. It is insane that you cut the tolls going across the bridge where out-of-staters are coming, and now you're going to make people who live in Maryland pay more just to get to their jobs. It is time for us to stand up. We need a comprehensive transportation policy. That's what I would do as governor. Thank you.
Thank you. Now turning to an environmental question. This question is for Rich Natalino and Kevin Cabinets. One of the main problems for Maryland is that we are downstream from pollutants coming into the bay from Pennsylvania and downwind from air pollution from western states with coal-burning electric plants. Without federal support, how will you be able to negotiate interstate agreements on these issues if you are elected? Mr. Natalino.
Thank you. So on the issue of the pollution that's coming down the Susquehanna from Pennsylvania, you have to, without the federal government's involvement, it is very, very difficult to get into changing the procedures and the rules in Pennsylvania. That's where we are so fortunate to have an aggressive Attorney General in Brian Frosch, who is actually getting out there and taking on the polluters and taking on the Trump administration for their failure to enforce our laws. And it would be, quite frankly, up to the Attorney General to aggressively go after polluters in Pennsylvania, and I plan to be the governor that Brian Frosch deserves, as far as a partner in actually fighting pollution and fighting the Trump administration. I don't know if people realize that with all of the funds that we stand to lose from the federal government, by zeroing out the Chesapeake Bay program, that is all of our enforcement staff. I mean, all of the people who work for the state government who are out there doing enforcement are being funded by the federal government. If we don't stand up aggressively and stop that from being happening, our environmental programs will be decapitated. We're fortunate we've got people like Jamie Raskin, Ben Cardin, Chris Van Hollen, a whole team that is actually fighting very hard to stop it, and I'm confident they will. But we've got a problem with the river. And then when it comes to air quality, our governor has refused to participate in the interstate compact that has been arranged to fight back and enforce the Paris Accords here. He says we have these standards already in Maryland, but we're going to suffer if we can't get West Virginia, Ohio, the states to our west to actually enforce the same standards, because we will never be able to afford to clean our own air to that standard without their help.
Thank you. Mr. Cummins?
Thank you. You all may not know this. Baltimore County actually is home to 200 miles of waterfront and 2,000 miles of streams and tributaries. And 2/3 of our county geographically is zoned rural in nature and is on well and septic. So the environmental protection is a big deal in Baltimore County. We've tried to do some innovative things at the local level. I put solar panels on our closed landfills and other rooftops of other county-owned buildings. Our goal is to try and generate 21 megawatts of power, saving $20 million in avoided costs over the next 25 years for our taxpayers. We actually are the only county in this state to own our own recycling center, and it's so efficient, it's generating $1.5 million a year back to the tax rolls. I think what we're showing is that you can save the environment while also saving taxpayer dollars. What we need to see on a state level is a little better cooperation, and we've seen that in the past when we've entered into cooperative agreements with Virginia regarding management of the crab population. Not as strong as I'd like to see, but there was an effort. But right now, under Mr. Pruitt, Secretary Pruitt, Donald Trump is determined to decimate the EPA. Larry Hogan remains silent while they're rolling back protections on the Chesapeake Bay. It requires, as Senator Madaleno said, an aggressive Attorney General like we have to force the federal government to make sure that the Clean Air Act standards are being upheld by all states. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's now turn to education. This question is for Ben Jealous, Rich Madaleno, and Chris Vignaraja. One problem in Montgomery County and in other areas is the growing disparity in facility quality between newer and older schools. Older schools often lack basic functions like air conditioning. These decisions are controlled by the local school boards. If you are elected governor, how would you address this problem? We start with Mr. Jealous.
Well, you know, I got a vested interest in this. I got 2 kids in the Montgomery County Public Schools. And son's in kindergarten, my daughter's in 6th grade. But you travel across the state and you see the same thing again and again and again. You could be in Prince George's County, be in Cumberland. Reality is that we need to be doing a lot better by our kids. And it starts with casino money. And that lottery money. You think we forgot we have it. As governor, I will keep the promise to the people of this state that that money will be used to substantially increase funding for our public schools, not to supplant historic sources, but to supplement them. We have to be prepared to provide our kids with a first-class education, not by national standards, but by global standards. And the reality is we used to lead the country, we've fallen 5 places. But if you look at our country, compared to the rest of the world, we're the 29th by many measures of the top 30 economies, or 28 to 27 in a given year. And the reality is that with full-day universal 3K, full-day universal pre-K, making sure there's a high-quality teacher in every class, and yes, substantially increasing many of our teachers' wages, and training them better, and building on the partnerships with our community colleges, get trade education back into the high school, so that we can retain more of our girls and a lot more of our boys. We can get Maryland back to being first in the country, and we can move Maryland towards even being among the very best in the world.
Thank you. Mr. Madaleno, same question.
So people may not realize that the governor of the state of Maryland is actually the most powerful gubernatorial office in the country. Our state constitution reserves more powers for our governor than any other governor in the country. That's why we need a governor with the experience with the, for example, the state budget to get in there and make the progress that we need from day one. I've got the experience with our school system in Montgomery County, with the other school systems. We are ready to move forward with a partnership between the state government, the county government, and the county school system that would provide an immediate influx of $1 billion in facility improvements for our county. And that same model can be used for Prince George's County, and should be, and for Baltimore County, and should be, because it's the same model that we're using in Baltimore City right now. But that's the type of heavy investment that we should put out right now in our local schools, in our older communities, in order to bring back that sense of desirability and stability, and to deal with all of the issues around overcrowding that we experience in so many schools. Like them, I have 2 kids in Montgomery County Public Schools. I have a junior in high school at BCC. They can't play football at that school right now. They can't play any sports at that school right now because they're having an addition put on. That's a great thing. But we need to put that investment in building new schools and enlarging schools and improving schools. We can do that in the state of Maryland with a governor who wants to get it done. Right now, that's our problem. We have a governor who won't, who doesn't want to get it done because that's not a fun press release to send out. I will make sure we will make those investments in our young people and in our communities.
Thank you. Ms. Vignaraja?
So to Alex's point about if you want to see where we should be democratic, I think our school system is a perfect example of where the fact that we were talking about air conditioning or heating, or in my father's school in Baltimore City, he taught in the Baltimore City school system for 37 years, they didn't have drinking water. And so when they could afford water coolers, the kids would have water. The fact that we're talking about hydration suggests that there is something very backwards under this governor. I'm the only candidate in the field who's a product of Maryland Public Schools from kindergarten to 12th grade. My little girl who's up there with my husband is exactly in part why I decided to run. Because the truth is that, when you listen to the Cohen Commission hearings as I was at on Thursday, you realize that there's a lot of big problems out there, and we absolutely have the money. If you want to figure out what entities' priorities are and their values, look at the budget. And so under my leadership, I would make sure that from cradle to career, we were instituting the reforms that are necessary to make sure our kids have a safe and comprehensive education. Everything from universal pre-K to making sure that we're investing in STEM. I went to Woodlawn High School, and it was a high school that doesn't perform very well, but the only reason I was able to go on to good institutions was because there were investments in STEM education. Because I didn't fall in love with molecular biology when I was 17, I fell in love with it when I was 7. And the fact that we are not investing in elementary and middle schools at the rate that we are in high schools reflects that we're not going to be able to compete, not just within Maryland, but with other states and other countries. But it's also that I think there's the little things, like making sure that we're ensuring hot, healthy breakfasts and lunches for our kids, because we need to address this problem in a holistic way. These are our kids, and we have to make sure that they can realize their future.